Hey guys, Sean Hammond with Premier Guitar. We're here with a gear demo from Carey Nordstrand. Carey, how you doing?
Good, thanks.
Good. It's good to see that Synonix bass again. We saw that here a little while ago, but today you're here to show us the new Starlifter preamp, right?
Well, it's not technically new, but it's something that we've had for a minute. But yeah, we wanted to kind of dive into this thing a little more in depth and get into all the features and how you might use it and what it's capable of and specs and things. So yeah.
Cool. So for those who haven't really seen it much or aren't familiar with the features, do you want to just start from the bottom, work your way up for what it's great for?
Sure. Let me turn this off. Or I could turn it off here. So that's a mute switch. We'll just start with that. Bottom mute on and off. It mutes everything except the tuner out, and there's a tuner out right here. And then this is the engage switch over here, which when you turn it on, it turns the EQ section on or off. There's a volume knob here, which comes out of a line out right here on the back side, and that has as much as 40 dB of gain available on there, so you can run a powered cabinet or run it into the back end of the back of your amplifier, just directly into the amp in. If you have let's say you have an old amp and the front end is died or is acting weird, you could take this thing and just run it into the back, and it'll just use the power part of your amplifier. So that's a pretty neat trick there. So on off, and that's the EQ section when it's on. And in the EQ section, we have a contour switch here on the front of the signal. So this is flat in the middle. And if you go down, it's a scoopy smiley face type of EQ. And if you go up, it's the other direction. It's a little bit of a mid, thick, warm, kind of a vintage. We call it vintage sound. And then you have your EQ section here. There's a bass. Mids are sweepable here, and then treble. The bass is from plus or minus 15 dB at 70. The mid goes from 150 to 2.8K, and it's plus or minus 15. And the treble is plus or minus 15 at 6K. And I just want to put a little footnote in that, a lot of times people ask you about EQ points, and it really depends on how you're defining that EQ point. And even though you're getting numbers, when people tell you what the EQ points are, you really have to kind of plug in and play it and see how it feels to really get a sense of what the things do. Because the curves can be different when you turn the thing all the way up. The curve can change, so
they're not totally linear in their
right.
response.
Yeah, it's not like a perfect digital, thing. So
in a nutshell, the Starlifter it can be a couple things or like three things. It can be a preamp pedal that you run to the front end of your amp, or you can, if you have an amp that's got enough juice but not the best preamp, you could run this as your preamp into it, or this could just be a nice DI box, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So this is where all the rubber hits the road up here on the ins and outs. So your bass plugs in here, and you've got a 10 meg impedance here. So if you wanted to run, an upright or something, a piezo pickup, there's a pad in case you have a hot active bass, or this thing sometimes, to be honest, in series mode. 12. There's a tuner out. This is where you plug in your power adapter. It's 12 to 15 volts AC. So you're not going to get away with using a 9-volt power supply on this thing, or batteries. We designed the power supply on this to be way far above and beyond what you could achieve with a 9-volt battery and have any kind of battery life. So as a matter of fact, it's a good time to mention we used Burr Brown op amps for the audio path in this thing, which are known for being really musical and they're in a lot of real high-end hi-fi gear. So that's part of the big part of the reason this thing sounds so musical and lush. And then keep moving on here, we have a ground lift. There's an EQ switch, so you can have the EQ in the DI path or not. And I can show you a little bit of that when we play here. And then there's a pad for the DI out in case it's coming out too hot. It's a 20 dB pad there. So.
Nice. Now, as you were switching some of the foot switches there, the LED colors changed. Am I right? Is that just a function of on and off, or do you want to explain that color coding a little bit?
So the mute's going to override everything and turn the light red all the time. That's how that's going to work. And then when you have it on, you get signal from the output here and from the DI, and then you can turn off the EQ section or turn on the EQ section. That's what the green lights are for.
Okay.
The volume knob's going to work all the time. It does not have a true bypass. It's not
Okay.
that kind of pedal. So you have a buffered signal no matter what, and you have gain available no matter what.
All right, Carey. So, what are some of your favorite sounds here? And while you get those set up to show us, what are you capturing them with via into your computer?
Okay, well, I'm running Universal Audio's Luna DAW. They call it a recording system, which is true because you can't use it without their interface. I have an Apollo X4 here. So I'm coming out of the DI out into the X4, and I have a Unison API preamp plug-in up, just flat. I think I have the high pass on. Yes, I do, just so it doesn't get muddy. It's a pretty low high pass, just to keep the bottom from getting real thumpy in DC. It's a pretty common thing.
So mainly your plug-in preamp is to sort of even out volume differences between pickup positions. Is that right?
Well, no, I also have another preamp on an insert to adjust for gain
Okay.
discrepancies. Like, because when you go on this bass, if you go between regular parallel and then you go into series mode, it's quite a bit louder in series. So that's, I just wanted to be able to make it so you guys don't have to do quite so much editing at the other end of this thing, right? But the main thing though is on the very input, the actual preamp that I'm using in the Apollo is the API 212L, I guess is what the model is. So.
Okay. So what are we going to hear first? What are kind of your favorite things to do with this as a bassist?
Well, I mean, typically the way I like to walk people through this is to just kind of, play a lick in a couple of different settings. So let's. I mean, you had the play in at the beginning of the video, but let me play a little bit more with it flat right now, just to sort of establish a bass line.
Okay.
So that's what you get with it just flat. So now if we switch the modern switch on. And I should point out this is in parallel, both pickups on, and it's flat. And I'm going to leave it that way while I'm using this, because if I turn the high end off, you won't be able to hear what the pedal's doing, which is what these EQ switches do on the bass. So then in the other direction, we've got the vintage switch, the vintage setting, which is a thicker, warmer kind of vibe. So that's I tend to use that one a lot myself when I'm tracking and recording stuff. I like the vintage one, especially with the P bass. It just gives it a little bit thicker, gooier, more syrupy vibe. It's really cool. And then I like to turn the bass up just a tiny bit. So, but this thing can go pretty crazy. One of the things I like to do is show people how the mid EQ works. So if you turn this, and this is a common technique for recording engineers, you turn the gain all the way up and then you sweep it until you find the frequency that either you want or you want to eliminate, and then you can adjust the gain to where you want it. So I turn it all the way up and I set it on the lowest setting, which is again 150, and it goes to 2K, 2.8K at the top. So, and then I'll just so you got quite a range there. And then I'll find a spot and just, a lot of times I'll cut a little bit in the 800 to 1K and then add a little bottom and a little top. That's pretty common. Now the thing is, that's kind of like just doing the modern switch. So if I add that to the modern switch, it's like extra. Which, that's a little too far for me for most of what I do. But just to show you some of the versatility of what the pedal can do. And then, of course, you can set up a setting here, do something like that, and then you've got that. And then you hit the EQ button, and you So you bypass the EQ. So if you're in a house mix, you can send them a totally flat EQ, and then you can have your own EQ for your rigs, for your enjoyment while you're playing your show. Or if you're in a studio and they want a super clean, no EQ path, you can do that too. That's why that switch is there.
Oh, that's pretty diverse, man. There's a lot of cool things you can do with it. How much is this going for?
These sell for $349. They come with the power supply. We also have an optional European power supply. That if you live over there and you bought one, we would include that with the pedal. So that's $349, and we just got a huge shipment in. So so
awesome!
We're
You better
ready
get
to go.
rid of those. Why don't you tell people? Why don't you tell people where to go online to find out more about the Starlifter and everything else that you guys do there, including you guys have pickups and pedals and all that. And then maybe can you play us out after you do that?
Sure. So the website is nordstrandaudio.com, and you'll find this there. We have pedals. We used to have pedals. This is the only pedal we have now. We had more pedals, but the Rocket Surgeon thing, we kind of killed that off at one point. Anyway, we have this pedal is on there. We have all kinds of pickups. We have basses. We've got the new Cat bass, which is super popular, and we can't keep those in stock. So that's we also have mutes. These are a big popular thing, the Nordy mute. So all this stuff you can find it on our website. We have hats and t-shirts and beer glasses and things too. So there's a lot of information. There's a lot of content. I mean, over the years, the content has tons of people have created a bunch of great content, and we have a lot of stuff on our YouTube channel now too. So if you're curious about diving into the deep end about how all our stuff works, there's a lot of stuff out there now. So
awesome! Thanks for joining us, Carey. Thanks for joining us, everyone out there. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on any other gear demos, gear spotlights, and rig rundowns, and lessons, all that stuff, first looks, and we'll catch you next time.